Thank you, Tom. Good morning. We are delighted once of the GOJ just to talk about how we see the future and what are the next steps we're going to adopt in order for the future to remain viable. This will be the keyword for the keynote that I'm going to develop for the next half an hour. I'm sure it will set the scene for what's to come in the event. As from the program, you can see that themes such as compliance, responsible gaming are really strong. Maybe this is what the moment is calling for and what I do intend to develop with your patience. So, on the future, I'm sure that you would rather prefer so much that we talked about this, the recent pre-engagement for the government, for a future government, which includes issues on betting and gambling. But I do feel more comfortable speaking about what we are doing in light of what's going on. And this is largely an issue of interpreting the data. It's all about interpreting, looking into this chart. It is quite a powerful chart, the quarterly data from our market, stretching from some years back. And the future, the answer to what we are intending to do and the challenges that we have ahead, both the regulator or supervisor and the industry, is within the interpretation of this chart. But I found out that in order to be really prospective, which is the exercise I would like to do, not explanatory, but not retrospective, but prospective, trying to anticipate what's going to come, we need not only data, but some concepts. No retrospection, introspection, and prospection. I think we need to look into the data really in a fashion that allows us to develop and anticipate what is going on. And this is what I will purport to do. We will arrive by doing this at what we are doing, at what we intend to do for the future, which is no other thing than looking ahead and trying to make sense of how consumers are making their spend. This is a recurring issue in all jurisdictions that I know of, at least in Europe, and it sure is one issue of concern for ours here. Now, back to the chart. I'm saying, or I've just said that we tend to look at this graph as though if we needed to explain what has gone on in the past. This is not what I want to do today, but the truth is that we've oftentimes interpreted this data as though our market was Netflix, HBO, Amazon Prime, and the like. This is some headline news from El País some couple months ago, stating that piracy in Spain, the illegal consumption of content, has dropped down dramatically ever since the inception of Netflix and the like. You see the underlying statement there. The key is it has lowered down dramatically from the moment previous to these platforms entering into the market in Spain. So this is the way that we normally explain what has happened in our online iGaming market in Spain for the past years. We are so proud of the undeniable success that we've had when channeling the consumption from the unregulated environment to the regulated environment. And this, of course, is partially the truth, and a very strong one, for a matter of fact. For me as a regulator, I'm sure you will understand that I live up to this fact every day of my life, and I'm very proud of them from my standpoint and those that have preceded us. But it does very little, this sort of explanation, to anticipate what we have ahead again. So back to the question, what is going on and what is the supervisor doing about it? Concepts. It does help to have a goal in mind. In our case, the goal is for the market to remain viable. Viable means able to continue as such, able to exist even. And I am talking about socially viable, socially not only tolerated, but integrated in society. Now, I'm a believer, I have always been. I think there is a way forward for this to remain the case. But I think that we need to make sense of some issues first in order to place ourselves in the right track. And hey, this is where I think that it's not only words and concepts that are useful, but math, indeed, logical reasoning. Because from what I know, I think this could be explained in terms of a formula, the formula, magical formula for viability. I think we at the DGOJ think that viability may come down to a set of external factors that are not really controllable by a supervisor, not even directly controllable by the industry. But however, there is another internal factor that we can account for and control directly. So it's a range of things. First off, the external factors that we don't really control. I would say that you've got growth. The growth of the market is an important issue. You've got the degree of concern related to the market, which is related, of course, to the market, but it has a life of its own, as I will explain. You've got the real risk underpinning this activity that you have to account for as well. And you've got your main instrument, regulation. This is what we care about, how to better regulate the market and place ourselves, society, industry, in the position for the market to be better and ever more socially viable. I'm a believer, okay, but these are issues that I can't, as a regulator, as a supervisor, control directly. Let's go one by one. For the growth. Growth is important because it's not bad or good, it just is. And the fact is, the more the market grows, the more impact its consequences has on society, for the good or the bad. So for better or worse, we need to take account of the market growth. And truth is, online gaming market in Spain is going to continue growing. I have no doubts about that. All things being equal, of course. For the future, we'll see. But all things being equal, the upward trend is going to be maintained. It already accounts for roughly 50% of the GGR in terms of the overall gaming and gambling market in Spain. The path is, as I was saying, absolutely upward. Maybe not so dramatically the estimation for 2019. This is a conservative estimation, by the way. But maybe we're no longer going to experiment some 25+% compound aggregate growth rate yearly, but we will still remain in an upward trend. Further, there's room for improvement if we compare ourselves to our closest jurisdictions. In terms of iGaming spend per capita, we are ranking the lowest of our neighboring countries. So this is a fact that has to be borne in mind. If we look at things on GDP contribution of iGaming, Spain still ranks amongst the lowest of our neighboring countries. All this makes me think that the market is going to continue growing, in fact. So, in light of this, we need to take account of the issues that do affect concern. The perception, it is such a recurring theme these days. So, another fact, there is some concern on the industry as we speak. There has been. It is not a specific issue of the Spanish landscape, but elsewhere in Europe, at least, there is a growing concern on the assimilation of the gaming market, and more precisely, the iGaming market within society. And I could give many, many indicators, but just suffice to say that we know of the number of local authorities claiming for the banning of any advertising, the banning of betting shops, has grown exponentially over the past 3 years. So this signals a clear path of concern. Not that all the blame is to be laid on the online side of things. Of course, it does amount to that. The fact that their number, in particular, of betting shops and betting data points from the brick and mortar side of things has really skyrocketed. So we've got at the moment, and this is a snippet of the data that we're going to publish next week on the global market data, more than 13,000, nearly 14,000 betting points, physical points in Spain. So I do wonder how does that compare, for instance, to the number of the UK, but quite a compelling number. But the point here is that this industry is not, and is not going to be able to control as such the degree of concern. Why? If you look at this, you can see that this is the number of customers, of users that our market has got in any given year. You can see a certain growth there. Now, 2019, last year, 1.4, 1.5 million users. You may think this is a lot, but it really does amount only to 3.8% of the Spanish population over 18 years old. For me, this is a key fact, and one that will not allow the industry, let alone the supervisor, to control concern as such. If we take from this 3.8%, those players who are incidental players who do not engage in using this service for over a month, 2.7%, okay, of the Spanish population about 18 years old. If you compare this to other, let's say, unhealthy patterns of consumption, risky products, or other gaming products, you see that the picture is absolutely different, okay? Shall I refer, for instance, here to consumption of tobacco, 36% of people, families who have a diesel vehicle, very environmental and friendly these days and popular, 56%. People consuming alcohol over the course of the past months, 62%. Lotteries. Not to say that lotteries are dangerous per se, of course. 73%. So this is the one key fact that does not allow for concern being dealt with and tamed by the regulator on the industry. The people in society arriving at a consumer experience directly of online gambling services are too limited. The majority of the society knows and has forged an opinion on online gambling, irrespective of whether or not they have indeed been engaged in consumption. And this changes everything. So no surprise that advertising issues are so sensitive for the rest of society. You see this chart, this is the bars are purportedly proportionate. So you can see this is the proportion of gambling advertising, excluding bonus, over GGR yearly. You see that the trend is more or less the same, roughly about 20%. But if you see the figures, you see that in the past couple of years, the figures devoted, the numbers devoted to gaming advertising has rising. Very specifically, if this is the one issue that concerns society, the society that do not use and is not interested in using this sort of gaming products. So if we were to carry out a survey just outside here about 100 random people, and we were to ask them, do you think that gambling advertising should be banned altogether? What do you think the outcome would be? Simplifying, there is no way that we can account directly for concern with only 3.8% of the people, consumers of this product, after 8 or 9 years of this product being a reality in Spain. Risk. And this is the part that I want to focus on. You may ask, why have we put together the two key figures that I've shown so far, GGR growth and user growth. How is it that only this limited user growth has been amounting to this GGR growth? So where is this consumption coming from? And this is what should make us look into the data in a different fashion. We know as a fact, and you've got this data and chart available publicly, that if we scatter and divide the spend per tranches of population according to how they spend, the picture is a real imbalance. There are few people, hardcore consumers, in lack of a better word, who amount to the GGR much more than the rest. This is again, a fact. It's not a value judgment, it just is. But we need to take account of this fact if we want to see the look ahead of us in a promising way. Very, very, very simple and slightly biased chart. If you take not only spend, but other KPIs such as the deposit, the average value of deposit, the average active days, of course, the net spend, you can see the tremendous imbalance there is between how this is scattered around the population, the e-gaming population in Spain, because those who really gamble intensely are really few. These are 20% clusters, okay? A cluster exercise in tranches of 20% of the gaming spend or win in Spain. And yet, it's a powerful, so it's really, really a generalizing figure, not very polished, but however, it does signify the trend very, very clearly. So there is risk. There is a risk underpinning the general growth, and these risks relates exclusively or largely, mainly to those consumers, very few of them, who signify a consistent involvement and a spend pattern over time, the heavy spenders. No different news from any other jurisdictions, of course. Last issue, regulation. This is the main instrument that we do have to change things, to tame things, or to reconcile the reality with our wishes as public servants and policy professionals, shall we say. But hey, you know as well as I do that these times have not been specifically prone to being friendly of regulation. Regulation has been really difficult to pass. If we trace back to mid-2015, which is a very good date in my view to see the evolution, because it was the moment that online slots would change the gaming landscape in Spain, were effectively implemented by operators. You can see that there has been long periods without effective government, and other periods, couple of periods where the government has been either new or overturned, and so moments like over 2/3 of the effective time where there has been no way to pass an initiative. And yet, the very few that we have been market prone, very oriented to improve the functioning of the market, poker shared liquidity, reduction of the gaming tax, third market opening with 60+ licensees to be. However, some other very important initiatives have been lost in this, let's say, gloomy and fuzzy landscape of the past years. Things like the draft gambling, advertising, and responsible gaming regulation, things like the fraud prevention draft, which we've got a lot of hope about. It's stale now, has been for some time. Things like a responsible gaming orientation of the gaming excise that you pay. This has been left on the sidelines. So we can say that several things about this. First of all, regulation maybe is not always the first and foremost instrument to rely upon if you have an urgency. Second, regulation is imbalanced. And so it's all the more natural, and I want to step back a moment and praise the initiative to each his own, J-Digital largely, and the rest of the stakeholders. It is no surprise that the industry reacts to this stalemate regulatory-wise by virtue of their own initiatives. So last week, a modification of the Code of Conduct was passed. And it is not surprising because we haven't so far been able to give the regulatory response to important issues. So people move on, and reality moves on. But the second issue is not only regulation is imbalanced, but reality doesn't wait. And there are other advertising issues that maybe are not on the spotlight now. We talk, from the high political level-wise, affiliates, VIP issues, VIP policies, platforms where tipsters can offer their services that we're starting to look at, and we have been, as a matter of fact, looking at for a while already, and that will need to be catered for when the time comes. bottom line, regulation maybe is not the speediest course of affairs when dealing with an issue. Oftentimes we're called regulators. We do call ourselves regulators, but what we really are is supervisors of the market. Which brings me to the next question. If these factors, you can't control them, you can't control growth, it's still going to grow, the market's still going to grow, concern is going to exist, doesn't look good, as I say, the risk is certain in some player segments, and the regulation is maybe unable and uncertain for the time being, and maybe for the time to come, to provide public interest answers with the immediacy that should be desirable. What do we need to look at in order to make sure that this market is going to remain socially viable? This makes me turn to the second factor of the equation, this D sub T plus 1, which finally gives me a way to tell you about what we are really doing, what we've been preparing for the year. And what we have been preparing for the course of the past year largely has been trying to make you be more diligent, fostering diligence. This is what you can expect from us, from the GOJ. I would dare to say, under any leadership, mine included, that's to come in the near future. And again, I think this can be explained with a formula as well. It comprises 4 elements, 4 very clear elements that for us are setting the way that we want to pursue forward if we are to remain believers in the industry. The first one is we need to be evidence-based when it comes to the policy design that we make. And I could speak about lots of things, match fixing, fraud, minors, things like that, but I will just refrain myself of those, and I will just refer to the issue of responsible gaming related to this customer clustering. You may not be aware or not care, but you might want to know that last year there was a major push by the DGOJ to foster the governance of responsible gambling. We sort of institutionalized Responsible Gaming Council, and we issued a strategy and a program to work on specific and very particular outcomes when it came to responsible gaming policies. Something, by the way, I want to thank José Antonio García and his units for, because the amount and quality of work that they've carried out, it's really outstanding. I will mention but 3 initiatives, those. One of them related to a study that we have been carried out on how to characterize the different patterns of consumption as per different clusters of gaming population with a specific interest on big spenders. Second one, which I will mention only but won't develop here, is another study we've carried out related to whether or not player limits are functioning properly in terms of individual single player limits per operator vis-a-vis an alternative scenario whereby player limits will be set by once per market, so one across operator. And the third one, the technical notice and guidance as a result of all of this in terms of responsible gaming measures for operators. These have been 3 initiatives that we've been engaged in for the last year. Maybe they've been a bit overlooked by public opinion, but we're getting ready now. I'm afraid I might need more time. Okay, 5. Okay. So, what have we been doing? First of all, the evidence that has drawn us to is, after examining some variables out of 144 variables, possible variables, we've examined 32 variables, and we've taken those that have characterized or are better able to characterize clusters, different clusters, and the behavior of different clusters. And we have found out that it's not only spend that characterize the most intensive clusters, but other issues such as going beyond deposit limits. This is a nugget. This is something that we will present it to the Responsible Gaming Council in due course, so it is not yet available even to the Responsible Gaming Council, but here it is a taster for you. The value of promotions enjoyed, the number of cancelled withdrawals, the people with intense consumption. One variable that they are particularly intense about is that they regret a withdrawal immediately and they cancel it. This is very interesting and may bear some different policy implications. Average numbers of operators, number of active days, what games are prevalent in the most intensive segments, things of the sort. And what have we arrived at? As I was mentioning, there was another initiative called Technical Guidance and Guidelines on Responsible Gaming, okay? And this is something that we've been preparing with a lot of care, and I want, again, on with the acknowledgements to thank Guillermo and his team, the regulated team, for preparing and leading this initiative. We found out that in light of this evidence, there are measures that can be adopted depending on what consumers we are talking about. I won't go into any of the details here because, you know, I've got you're already nervous, okay? But bear with me a bit. But I will say that we've devised a range of measures related to the, let's say, the business values, culture, and vision of companies that they should implement. Another range of measures devoted to customer empowerment for, let's say, regular, unproblematic, and maybe a bit intense customers. And a third range of measures aimed at the intense, at-risk, hardcore range of customers where special diligence has to be carried out by the operator. For us, and I won't go into any of the details, I will just say that this is something that we will publish for public information soon enough, before the end of the year, if everything goes okay, and then subject to the Council for Responsible Gaming. With this, we have our hope that we will help operators to know what is expected from us to them. So predictability, which brings me to effectiveness. You might think that this is all some form of wishful make-believe, maybe, that this is not going to be enforceable or might be optional since it's guidance, so it's up to you to comply or not. I think you couldn't be farther away from the truth and reality if you thought this way, because we've been preparing to monitor properly this. Over the course of the last year, and this is my last acknowledgement, I thank Cecilia and her team for this because it's been a huge amount of work. We've been getting ready to automate and streamline our monitoring and reporting procedures, and now we are in a much better position to identify reporting data, from the reporting data that we get from you, what errors, or maybe not so errors, that you are reporting in a very short period of time. We are automating the enforcement procedures as well. So we are far better positioned to carry out a proper enforcement. And you might say, well, hang on a minute. This is only guidance. I shouldn't be bothered about this responsible gaming make-believe that you're drafting. Well, hang on a minute, I said. Turns out that you have a very compelling obligation in your terms and conditions of the license saying that you need to foster responsible gaming behaviors. Now, I would take, unwillingly, but I would take it, an argument saying, what does this mean? You haven't set out what you want. But now, from now on, we have. And with this, it is a compelling element for us to bear in mind in the context of a potential infraction or, God forbid, maybe a remotion of the license. It can make all the difference in the world when, you know, a dodgy things like this might happen, whether or not the operator has set up reasonably this range of policies that we have devised and offer them. So maybe it's not so optional. And finally, the last element of the function for diligence, cost. And I want to end up with a positive side of things here, not gloomy perspective. Administrative burdens and compliance burdens are a cost, okay? That much I know. But it is also true that technology is improving at a really fast pace, that there are solutions to identify, trace the behavior of customers, to make the digital onboarding available, and the like, that were not existing or existing at a reasonably economic level years ago. And it is also true that we are, as supervisors, carrying out ourselves some initiatives to improve the environmental health of the market, such as the recently added to our portfolio phishing alert service, which I won't go into details because I assume you all know what is it about. Further, and to be totally frank, it's not free from the truth that we have been really, really, really sensitive to these taxation issues later on. I don't know, or I can't recall very many jurisdictions who have succeeded to lower the taxation rate over the online gaming-wise over the past 10 years. Here you have one, but there's something to be given in turn, in correspondence, okay? Not to mention, of course, the specific situation of Ceuta and Melilla. Okay. Now we have and can boast of a more reasonable than ever taxation landscape when it comes to iGaming, and this has to be taken into account as well in order to design the cost of compliance. So, positive ending here. Let me just finish off and recap, okay? Tom, there you go, our formula for viability. There are some factors we can't control, we can't account for directly, that you can't either, mind you. But there are some others that we can, right here, right now, do control and will control if we want to remain believing in the social viability of the market. It is thus that the market, in our view, will persevere to remain socially admissible, viable, and accepted by society, and that, as a matter of fact, it will foster future growth, economic growth for this market. Okay, with this, I finished. There you go, our formulas. Shall I restate that if we are worried about viability, we should look at what we can control? In the end, don't be fooled by all this pretentious language. It's all about storytelling. It doesn't, I mean, this doesn't have the purpose of setting out, a hardcore economic or mathematical reason of things. It's only storytelling. And I know that formulae can be dull sometimes. So let me finish with a bit of literature. We are in a moment that it is up to us to decide what kind of a market evolution we want. Everything has been written before our age. Okay? We talk about technology, we talk about all these things, but human nature has been the same years and years back. And literature is the food of the soul, they say. It's up to us to decide whether we want this landscape, the gambler Dostoevsky, or we are favoring a more Dickensian side of things, where no matter how hard times are, no matter how stupid, if I may, the others seem to be from our standpoint, there's always some wit to be applied, there's always some smart edge to be applied in order to make uncertain times more certain, more predictable. I'm sure this is a trip that we are all engaged in. You can rest assured that this is what we are going to favor and push for in the months to come, irrespective of what happens with the government. I thank you very much for your patience, and hopefully we'll meet at the coffee break or elsewhere.